Welcome to episode 8 of the CALS Report, your insider's guide to leadership, innovation, and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics. I'm Will Reese, co-founder of Next Level Sports and proud CALS director since 2011. This episode of the CALS Report is presented by Teamworks, the operating system for sports. Trusted by over 5,000 teams, Teamworks is a strategic partner helping athletic departments streamline operations, support student athletes, and lead through change. Learn more at teamworks.com. In our big interview, Ryan Bradley sits down with someone who's been a part of the CALS story since day one, North Carolina Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham. Bubba has recently concluded his tour as chair of the NCAA Men's Basketball Selection Committee. He gives us behind-the-scenes look at the tournament, shares lessons from leading at the highest levels, and reflects on the early days of CALS. From revenue sharing to broad-based sports sponsorship to hiring one of the greatest football coaches of all time, this conversation is a masterclass in steady leadership through change. Then, in the deep dive, Kevin Barefoot of Teamworks is joined by Dr. Karem Cassam, a former NFL and Major League Baseball executive now leading innovation in player analytics. Together, they unpack how data is transforming roster strategy, recruiting, and performance evaluation, and why now is the time for college programs to catch up. From big picture policy shifts to next-gen decision-making tools, Episode 8 brings both perspective and practicality to those leading in college athletics sports environment today. Coming up next, Ryan Bradley kicks off big interview with Bubba Cunningham right here on the CALS Report, where the conversation continues long after the event ends. Hello and welcome to the CALS Report, Episode 8. I'm Will Reese, the co-founder and managing partner at Next Level Sports, as well as the proud director of CALS since 2011. We've got a great episode for you this month. We've got a new segment we're calling the Deep Dive. I'm very excited about. We're going to take an issue, we're going to take an idea and bring in experts and really put it under a microscope that we think will be very beneficial to those in college athletics and college athletics administrators. We're starting off with Karem Cassam, who's got a great background in pro athletics as a data analytics specialist. We're going to talk about roster building, the use of data. We've got Kevin Barefoot from Teamworks involved in the conversation. You're going to love it. We're really excited about this new segment. Starting off this month's pod, we've got a big interview with Bubba Cunningham and Ryan Bradley. They have a wide-ranging conversation touching on a ton of topics that you won't want to miss. Great content. Most importantly, they talk a little bit about CALS origin story, as Bubba was the host of CALS 1 and CALS 2. And so the cool thing is to see we'll be rolling into CALS 15 in Columbus this fall. At this point, we've had over 2,000 people involved in CALS. If you've ever had a chance to attend one of our events and have learned something, have connected with people, whether you've met somebody that's led to an interview, maybe you've gotten connected with a search firm, maybe you picked up an idea that you were able to take right back to campus, or if you've just had a good time at one of our events, it can all be traced back to August 2011 and one yes from Bubba Cunningham when I bought the idea of hosting an event in CALS, and he put his name on it. And that's meant a ton to me, both personally and professionally ever since. And it's also had a huge impact, I know, on many of you in our CALS community. And the cool thing is that one yes wasn't a one-time deal for Bubba, as he has encouraged and he's helped people over decades in this business. And he is a unique leader in that way. And I'm so very proud of what CALS has become because of his yes that day and belief in us. So you're going to love that conversation. You won't want to miss it. Before we jump in, just a couple of announcements. Rory McIlroy just won the Masters. We just crowned new champions within the last couple of weeks. The UConn Huskies, the Florida Gators, the coaching carousel is starting to come to a slow halt. So around here at Next Level, we're fired up at looking forward to the events this summer and in the fall. First up, we've got our CALS one-day event in Washington, D.C. on June 18th. That's a Wednesday, June 18th, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's our fourth CALS one-day regional event. If you're within a 4-hour drive of DC, you have heard from us as we just opened up registration within the last week. We're building a great agenda. We're going to be at George Washington. Michael Lippitz is going to host us. We're very excited about being in the DMV. So many great athletic departments and leaders in that area. So many people that are friends of CALS and people in our CALS community. Whereas, tell you a little bit about the event, whereas CALS is a senior level event, really this is built for everybody in your department. You can bring from 1 to 10 people, from 11 to 20 people. You sign up as a group. You come, you have a bonding experience. You meet people from your region. You get to connect, as well as our great CALS programming. We're putting the agenda together. We've got great people coming. They'll be out in the next few weeks. So go to our website, adsymposium.us. We've got a CALS one-day tab. You can go get information. You can register. If you want to come from a little further away, or you're interested in making it a little more of an event and spending a night, we do have a partner hotel that we can get you information and get you good rates there as well. So please go to our website, check that out. Another question I wanted to talk about that I get a lot is, how do I get an invitation to CALS? We've got CALS October 5th and 7th with Ross Bjork at Ohio State and Columbus. We're super excited to be there, our first time. In that region since 2017 when we were at Pittsburgh. 2018 we were in Pittsburgh. That's my bad. So we're really excited to be at a Big Ten school for the first time. But if you're interested in being invited to CALS, we have a very, very easy process. You need to be nominated by somebody that's part of our community, whether it's a faculty member, somebody that's been before. If you want to ask your current athletic director to nominate you, that'll work. If you are a sitting athletic director, you'd like to be a part of CALS, you can reach out. We can get you involved that way. But we do have a nomination form that will be attached to the email that you got. If you've got an email announcing this month's podcast, it'll be on there. Any of our communications, we'll also have it on our website on the registration page. You can take a look there. All you need is somebody that's been in our community to send us a recommendation, and we'll look at it from there, and we'll get you on our list if appropriate. Have any questions, adsymposium.us. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. My contact information is on there. Just wanted to say, as we're 7 episodes into this, we are so excited for how this is turning out. Every episode, we feel like it's become more and more and more like the ethos of CALS. And the people involved and everybody has been so wonderful and so gracious. A huge shout out and thank you to Ryan Bradley, who's absolutely killed it with this, as he does with everything. He's a huge part of what we do in all of our events at CALS, and very grateful for him. Very grateful for you to taking the time to be a part of this and listening and watching. We hope you continue to do that. We hope you continue to share with your colleagues and friends. With that, we're going to jump into the big interview with Ryan and Bubba. Thanks again for being with us.
It's time again for the big interview here on the CALS Report podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Bradley, and I couldn't be more excited to catch up with this month's guest, a founding father, if you will, of CALS, now in his 14th year as the Director of Athletics at North Carolina, our dear friend, Bubba Cunningham. Bubba, first, I know you've been on the road a lot the last couple of months, so thanks for making time to visit with us. How are you, and how are things in Chapel Hill?
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, and things are great here in Chapel Hill, and I'm so thankful to be back. You're right. The last month, the basketball tournament is absolutely what I think is one of the greatest sporting events in the world. But the time commitment for the committee is fairly extraordinary, and I've been traveling quite a bit. The tournament I thought was outstanding, but I'm really happy to be back in Chapel Hill.
A lot going on in college athletics, to say the least, and we're going to try to dig into those hot button issues. But first, I want to touch on your experience as the chair of the men's basketball selection committee. We just wrapped up the season, had an outstanding Final Four. That's a position, chair of that committee, that many ADs covet and aspire to their entire career. And you had the good fortune to sit in that seat this year, but we all know it's not just fun and games. So tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like, both the challenges and the rewarding aspects of the role.
Well, it has been absolutely an honor for me to be on the basketball committee. And Dan Gavitt and Joanne Scott in particular are the two staff members at the NCAA that have poured their heart and soul into this. And you see it in the tournament each and every year. They just do a terrific job, and so does the rest of their staff. I mean, the logistics of having 67 games in multiple cities throughout the country, syncing it up so you've got the start times, the finish times, you've got the partnership with CBS, Turner, Warner Brothers. It is way more involved than any of us can imagine. And to be in it has been really a great experience for me, a great learning experience as well. And it started 5 years ago. You're on the committee for 5 years. And my first year on the committee, it was in the bubble. So we were selecting teams remotely. We came together in Indianapolis as a committee and selected the teams for that tournament. And as I mentioned, there's not a single staff or city that could have pulled that off other than Dan and Joanne in the city of Indianapolis to get all of those teams there, get them into the bubble, play the tournament, and have such a wonderful experience for those student athletes after the disappointing year the year before where the thing got canceled. And then, then in year two was the second year that then we made a run to the Final Four. And so I really wasn't as involved that year as much as I would normally be. Then the following year, we didn't make the tournament, so I was completely involved. And then then last year we were number one seed going in, and now this year we're on the bubble. So I've had 5 completely different experiences as part of a committee member, and I learned an awful lot from each of those experiences. So I can go into more detail on any one of them, but the 5-year experience certainly broadened my my knowledge of what's going on. And hopefully I've contributed a little bit, and I would like to continue to work with Dan and Joanne about some tweaks I think that we make the tournament selection process even better as they go forward.
Yeah, speaking maybe to that audience of aspiring ADs or current ADs who hope to be part of that committee someday, how has your perspective changed about what being involved in that committee looks like from before you got the chance to serve to now completing this 5-year term?
Well, it's definitely a lot of time, and you have to be prepared, and you need to really have some staff back home that can help you get prepared for the meetings as well as the seating selection process in the time that you're away. In addition to that, you have to have a great staff at home that can, keep things running on your home campus while you're away. But I think the number of games that you watch, the number of things that you're asked to do and at least express an opinion on is probably more than I thought. The administration of the tournament, the site selection, hotel selections, and when I say site selection, not just the Final Four, but the Final Four, the regionals, and the opening rounds. I think the discussion about expansion is something that I didn't anticipate when we started. And then, certainly what happened coming out of the bubble and trying to make sure that the tournament for the men and women are, equitable. And we want to make sure the experience for our student athletes is extraordinary. All of those things you kind of take for granted. But then when you're on the committee, you realize that's your responsibility. It's not just to select the teams, bracket the teams, and then run the tournament. It's all the things that go behind the scenes that you kind of take for granted.
You're at a school that puts a really high priority on basketball. And as you mentioned, through this 5-year experience, you've run the gamut. You've had a number one seed, you've had a bubble team, you've had a team miss the tournament. Talk to us about how you wear those dual hats and maybe compartmentalize your thought process and your energies as it relates to my focus is on supporting our teams back on campus, and then I've got this really important job to do as a member of the committee.
Yeah, well, for the first 4 years I was on the committee, I was, assigned conferences that I was the conference monitor for. And so you have some primary and some secondaries that you really dig in and learn about those conferences. So when you get to the committee and you're reviewing all the teams, you really have a specialty, and it's not your conference. And obviously it's not your school either. And so when someone is talking about the ACC or talking about North Carolina in general, you hear those statements. And then when it gets down to voting time or discussion about whether or not a team should be included, you're not part of the conversation. So when I say you hear some of it is when you get the conference report and say, okay, let's talk about the ACC, or in my case, the Big 10 or Big 12, even though there's a commissioner or an AD in the room, you can say, the factual things about a particular team. That's just in the preliminary discussion about it before you get to Indianapolis. Once you get to Indianapolis, any discussion about a team, either in a conference commissioners league or an individual team that a member of the committee represents, you end up leaving the room. You're literally out of the room for any discussion about that particular team. And so, they take that very, very seriously, and we all do. And that's something that I probably underestimated how significant that was. And it's really even more challenging for a conference commissioner because they're out of the room a lot because they have multiple teams being considered for their league. So, I mean, that's probably one of the things that, as it relates to team selection and discussion, that was probably the most enlightening since I've been on the committee.
Very insightful. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit. You haven't just been busy with basketball this year. Just a few months ago, you made a change in your football program that resulted in the hiring of one of the greatest professional football coaches of all time. Walk us through that process and what it's been like to onboard Coach Belichick and his staff in this era where the lines between college and professional sports are continuing to merge.
Well, I tell you, Coach Belichick and his staff have been incredible to work with. And what I found interesting, obviously the whole process was what it was. You have two parallel searches going on. You have a traditional college coach search, and then you have somebody you think, well, is he really interested? Is he not? You weren't really sure. So you run them in parallel tracks, and you just didn't know. But it became very apparent very quickly that, yeah, he was very interested in this job. His dad was here, and then he went to Navy, and he was at Navy for a long time. And he grew up on a college campus, if you will. It was a Naval Academy. It's not your traditional college campus, but really enjoyed living in Annapolis. And he has spent his entire career watching film and being around football. I mean, he is incredible when it comes to the detail around football. And you think, boy, is this really possible that he's going to want to do this? And ultimately, he chose to do it. The thing I found most surprising was when he got here, he didn't immediately go hire all of his coaches. What he did is he hired his general manager and he hired a personnel staff to review the current roster and then take a look at the portal and see, how do I build my roster? How do I construct it with this new NIL, now rev share as we go forward? And that's where he spent all of his time for the first couple of months. And, he's a 6:30 in the morning guy, 10 o'clock at night, every day watching film. And that's what drives him. That's his passion. And so I've been very impressed with what they've been able to do. And then once he got the roster set, then he went out and hired the coaches. And now he's coaching the coaches, coaching the players. And it's just been a real eye-opening experience for me to see a different way of doing it. A guy that's been a part of 8 Super Bowls, 6 as the head coach. It's been a great learning experience for all of us.
Yeah, there's really no precedent for it, and so we're all excited to see how this plays out. A 6-time Super Bowl champion coach leading a major college athletic program in this new era of college sports. As you mentioned, revenue share is upon us. I think it's important to note, as we're recording this podcast, it's early April. So as we speak, we're still waiting on the final ruling from Judge Wilkin in the House case. With that in mind, what do you see as the most critical aspects of the proposed settlement? And what are the next steps to ensure this outcome actually leads to some level of stability for college athletics going forward?
Well, you're right. We're all kind of on pins and needles. We'll anticipate that it will be approved. There's every indication that Judge Wilkin will approve the settlement, which allows us to revenue share, which, 10, 15, 20 years ago, very uncomfortable with a compensation model for student athletes. But as the commercial activity has continued to rise in intercollegiate athletics, and the courts have told us, the courts have told us twice we're in violation of antitrust. So figure out a different economic model that's going to meet the needs of today's students and fit within the court system, the judicial system. So that's what we're trying to navigate. We still won't have antitrust protection, but we will have a settlement for past claims, and we'll have a financial model going forward, that will allow us to compensate student athletes above and beyond the scholarship. Will this be the final economic model? I don't think so. I do think that at some point we're going to have to get to collectively bargaining. I do think that, we do need to get to Congress And I think Congress should really take a hard look at status for student athletes, that they could collectively bargain but not be considered employees. I think that would be helpful. And I think if we can get there, I think at some point we might get to some kind of an antitrust exemption that will allow us to have a national standard. We have, there's so many different lawsuits by state right now that if we're going to have a national governing body and national competition, we do need national standards. And we can't let every state get into the mix and say, well, I don't like this or like that. And so I think that's our next step. But, I have a few thoughts of how we might get there. And hopefully that over time, we'll see the benefit of revenue sharing. We might get to collective bargaining. And then I think we'll get to antitrust protection. But trying to get antitrust protection now, I don't see that happening.
You've been a big proponent of broad-based sports programs for many years. In fact, as we're speaking today, North Carolina is on top of the Learfield Directors Cup standings. What do you foresee as in the revenue sharing era of college athletics? What impact will that have on non-revenue sports, especially at schools like Carolina, who have made broad sports sponsorship and the expectation of competing for championships in all sports a big part of the ethos of your institution for many decades?
Oh, you're right. I mean, we take great pride in our Olympic sport programs and having a broad-based program. What I have said for the last 5-6 years, we have been revenue sharing forever in college athletics. We have 2 sports that generate a lot of revenue. We've shared it across in our case, the other 26 sports that don't. And what we're seeing now is a different revenue sharing model. If you generate the revenue, you get the revenue. And so what every school and every conference is going to have to make that decision. How important are the sports that don't generate revenue? At Carolina, they're very important. And we went through this during COVID. We talked about a couple of things in COVID. All right, we know we're not going to have enough money. So what are we going to do? Are we going to drop sports? Are we going to, what we called mothball them, which means kind of strip away some of the support? Or are we going to create a revenue model that allows us to create revenue to support the other teams? And that's what we're taking the same approach right now. We're going to maximize our revenue share with our student athletes that generate it. But the institution is committed to providing these educational opportunities for the other kids to play sports that don't generate revenue. And every school is going to have to do that. Institutional support was kind of a phrase that none of us wanted to really get to because the commercial activity was just skyrocketing and you had enough money to do that. But with the courts moving us in a different direction, schools are going to have to take a look at it and say, if it's important, we're going to fund it. Every school is funded pretty much the same way. We all take in tuition as an institution. There are certain majors that are more popular, and those are where the kids are gravitating. You still have these other majors that don't have as many students, and it costs you more to run them, but we think they're important, so we fund them. And if we're simply, you're going to get the money and give it to those that generate it, the entire economic system of the university would be different as well. We're not going to do that. And the university's not going to do that academically either.
That's a great analogy. I don't know that I've heard that particular analogy before, between the parallels between what we're doing on the athletics side and all the different majors that you're offering in order for students to be able to choose a path that makes sense for them in their future. There are so many things on an AD's plate these days, selection committee assignments aside. How do you balance it all? And how important is the delegation in both duties and decision-making to your staff in order to keep everything moving in the right direction and on time?
Well, this university, heck, I happen to have an incredible job right now at a great university with a lot of outstanding individuals. They've been running this place for a long time, highly successfully. We continue to host a lot of NCAA championships. We have a great staff, both in the athletic department, and we lean on the staff across campus. You can't have over 200 events a year, over 1 million visitors coming to campus and just run it out of the athletic department. Our chancellor, our CFO, the system president, transportation and parking, housing, dining, all of those people are what make this university special and unique. Maybe not unique, but certainly rare. We had an opportunity, a couple of years ago, our game management staff was telling me we put in bids for 11 national championships to host NCAA championships. We were awarded 14. I'm like, how in the world did we do that? But the NCAA appreciates what this staff has been able to do. And, it's a real credit to the staff here that have been doing it for so long. We've got a great location, easy to get to. We have great facilities and great people that run it. And we do have the opportunity to host a lot. And again, it's just a tribute to the fine work of the people that we have on campus.
Let's talk about communications with your stakeholders, with your staff, with the media. What does your communication strategy look like, especially when you know you're about to make a really important or perhaps a really difficult decision?
I tell you, our communication, we really, really try to simplify it. When I first got here, we had I didn't know much about North Carolina. We've had a lot of people that are here for a long time. When I first got here, the average tenure of our head coaches was over 20 years. And then the staff was mirroring that as well. So we had 21 head coaches my first year, 406 years of experience as a head coach at Carolina. It was remarkable. And so we created a strategic plan. And the strategic plan was that, and we still use it, that we educate and inspire through athletics. That's our mission. And we have 4 very simple values. It's responsibility, innovation, service, and excellence. Responsibility is do what's right. Innovation is find a better way. Service is put others first. And excellence was a nod to Coach Smith when he had play hard, play smart, play together. We have work hard, play smart, win together. And that's what we do. So when we're trying to make decisions, we really try to go through that filter. And that's what we try to make our decisions. How do we make this place better for our student athletes? If we can't be better for our student athletes, and I said that wrong. How do we make the place better for all students, not just our student athletes? We represent very publicly the university. We shouldn't have an athletic department if we don't create a better university. And that's the filter that we run through. And our communication stresses that. So when we talk about it, we're going to maximize the number of opportunities through our broad-based programming for kids to come to school and get a great education, to educate and inspire. And I find it inspirational to see what these students do. We had a dinner last night to celebrate our national championship in women's soccer this year. And we had a panel of our students up there. We had Kate Fossey, who is our outstanding player. She won the Hondo Award this year. We also had Ethan Strand, who has 2 national championships under his belt. He ran a 3:48 mile this year. And we had Michaela Page, who won it in the 800 meter national champion. And so you sit there and you're like, my gosh, these kids are inspiring for all of us. So it's just lucky to be a part of it. And that's what's so great about being here.
A lot of amazing things happening at Carolina. And yet we're living in this era of the transfer portal, of NIL, of agents all over the place. And I'm sure you, like many other institutions, have fans and donors and perhaps even coaches and campus administrators who might not be totally enthralled with the current state or trajectory of college athletics. How do you message through all of that? You've got these great things happening. You've got turmoil to some extent happening in the greater ethos of college athletics right now. What's your messaging to cut through all of the noise?
We have our staff, myself, the CFO, the chancellor, our Rams club. We have the economic pressure that everybody else has. But what I really want them to focus on is our coaches, our students, our student athletes, the 3 that I just mentioned, all of our teams, 28 teams, 850 student athletes. Focus on them. Let us worry about the media rights, conference affiliation, economic model. That's not what this is about. We will figure that out. We will figure out a different economic structure. You guys worry about the investment in our student athletes and the experience that they have. That's what we've built this tradition on, and we're going to continue to do that.
I want to take a look back now. As I mentioned at the top, in your 14th year now at Carolina, but your first 2 stops as an AD were at Ball State and Tulsa, a decade or more combined at those 2 schools. How did those early leadership opportunities help you grow and become the leader that you are today?
As you mentioned, I'm really fortunate to be here, but I would not be here had it not been for Ball State and Tulsa. And, I mentioned, we educate and inspire through athletics. When I first got to Ball State, we did a strategic plan there. And the mission was that we're going to enhance the educational experience of all students. We had about a $20 million budget, of which the university was giving us 17. And so that's when it really struck me that we shouldn't have a department if we don't make the university better. And so I think that mentality, that idea that we're serving our students, we're serving our student athletes, we're serving the university community, and that's what, to me, it's all about. And it doesn't matter if you're a Power Five or not. You need to make the university better in every way by having the athletic department. So you're right. I've been at 2 publics now, 2 privates, 2 national, 2 regional. It's just been a great, great experience. And if it hadn't been for Will Reese and CALS, I wouldn't be here.
And we didn't pay you for that endorsement, but I know that will be music to Will's ears. We'll get into the CALS origin story here in a minute, but I want to stick with the Wayback Machine for a couple more minutes if we can. Are there any pivotal moments that stand out in your mind from your career, whether it was at Ball State, Tulsa, your early years at Notre Dame, that you look back and say, hey, that was a defining experience or a really important lesson for me along my career journey?
Oh boy, yeah. There's been many. There's been many. On the positive, I was at Notre Dame for a long time, as you mentioned, and Kevin White came in, and Kevin said, hey, what do you think you want to do with your career? Like anybody ambitious or, want to pretend like you're going somewhere. So, well, I think I'd like to be an AD. And he said, well, fine, I'll help you do that. I'm like, dang, that means I'm leaving. And so, that was a defining moment in my career. And so, but it was absolutely wonderful. And then to take that first step and get a job. I mean, I know there's an awful lot of people that want to be ADs, and, I've been turned down for so many jobs. And, I had Gene DiFilippo always like to tell the joke that by the time I got the Ball State job, he said he could fire a full-time assistant he had just writing letters of recommendation for me. So, I applied and got turned down a lot. But, you stayed with it. You said, hey, I really do want to do this, and an opportunity will show up. And it did. And really enjoyed my experience at Ball State. Got to learn a lot being in the Mid-American Conference. And then I went to Tulsa and had an experience at Tulsa. One time we had a student athlete getting a little jam, and I didn't tell the president soon enough. And boy, did I learn my lesson there. That quick communication to make sure that he is protected. I learned that lesson in spades. So if there's something that's happening now, I want to make sure my boss knows. And those are things that just come along. You do things right sometimes and you get some praise, and then you make mistakes. Boy, you need to own them and then try to figure out, I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't happen and learn from it.
I was having lunch the other day with a friend who's been a long time athletic administrator, and he was saying, Ryan, if you told me 5 years ago that I'd be spending my time on the things I'm spending my time on today, trying to navigate the challenges that we're facing, I wouldn't have even known where to start or what to believe. All that to say, the job of an AD has changed a lot since you started in the industry. So when you think about the challenges you're facing today, what are the skills and experiences that you believe are most important for a leader to possess in order to navigate all of this and be successful?
Well, all the basic skills of, integrity, character, all those things that you have to have in a leadership position. And you have to live the life that you're projecting to everybody else. But I think flexibility and creativity are the two things. When I think back in my career, my very first job, I was in the business office at Notre Dame. And, I know what the head football coach made, and I know what the basketball coach made. And we had every single player on our basketball team makes more than that right now in NIL and rev share. It's absolutely stunning. And never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be doing something like that. But I don't. If you're not flexible and adaptable, then you're not going to survive. It's a changing world. 1984, the NCAA was told they're in violation of antitrust. 2021, still in violation of antitrust. The rules have changed. We tried to make a bunch of different rules through legislation. We're now being forced through litigation to change the way we operate. And if you're going to get frustrated with it, then it's time to do something else. If you're going to say, okay, the game is different, let's figure out a way to play in the game, then I think you're going to survive and be successful.
All right, you said a few moments ago, tongue in cheek, I think, that you owe everything to Will Reese and CALS. The opposite may actually be true. Let's talk about CALS. Will has told the origin story many times and how CALS would not exist without you and your support in those early days at Tulsa. But not many people have had the opportunity to hear it from your point of view. So I'll ask you, what do you remember about how CALS got started and what has it meant to you to see how it's grown over the last 15 years?
Well, my recollection hopefully is the same as Will's. Will's was our director of operations, director of basketball operations, and he decided to get out of that, and he got in to be an agent for basketball coaches, assistant coaches, and Division II and Division III coaches, which is the group he knew really well. And he thought, boy, if I could connect them with some associate ADs in the industry, they may become ADs or they'd be ADs at Division II and III. They could hire some of my clients for these basketball jobs. And he said, I'd like to put together a group where we can bring these groups together. And I thought it's a great idea. I think the concept was really good. And, he's living in Tulsa. He'd been on our staff, and he asked if I would host it. And I said, sure, that'd be great. And so he brought those folks together. And ironically, the first weekend that this is going to happen, I'm interviewing here at North Carolina. So I'm here on, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I fly back on Saturday, and this event starts on Sunday. And there he is. He says, see, it's already working. You've already got a new job out of this. So that was the genesis of it. And it was a great idea. And exactly as he projected, that some of those Division II or III guys or associate ADs became ADs. His assistant coaches or coaches at the lower level became head coaches at higher level, and it continued to build upon itself. And I give him a ton of credit for growing that thing and staying with it, moving it around. I think professional development, moving it to different cities, keeping it fresh, keeping it narrow. I mean, his creativity and his thought and his passion behind it is extraordinary. So I do credit it a lot to him, because he was thinking about professional development. He was thinking about connections. He was thinking about relationships, and all of that has worked exceptionally well. And it was a great idea, and I'm so happy for him that he made it happen, and he continues to do it because it helps an awful lot of people.
You mentioned the importance of flexibility and adaptability for an AD in today's modern age, and I think you just talked about how Will did the same, although it might have been improvisation as you moved from Tulsa to Carolina, and we quickly decided, well, let's take CALS on the road. We'll do it at Carolina next year, and you're very gracious to host it. And I reflect on that first year where I was fortunate enough to be in the room. I was a small college AD down the street from Tulsa at Rogers State, and that was a neat experience. 35 or 40 people in the room, and you think about some of the people who were in that room and where they were in their careers at that point and where they are today. It's really remarkable to see the way that CALS has grown along with the career trajectory of some of those professionals that were in that room. Are there guys that stand out in your mind as you think about some of the individuals that you watched grow up and mature alongside CALS and are now leading in the industry today?
Oh, well, you mentioned one. I mean, at Rogers State, I mean, Ren Baker. I mean, Ren was terrific, a great friend. And you, Ryan, I mean, all the people that we've met. And I think that's what's so neat about the industry. It's people that you've met in class. I was in Sports Management Institute. I still keep in touch with those. But the people we've met at CALS, whether it's, Zach Selman has been a great friend still. And then Ren, as I mentioned before, there's invaluable relationships that you develop over time with so many different people. And Will is just absolutely fantastic at maintaining those relationships.
I like to say that Will is a one of one. He's definitely, you can't put him in a box. Tell me about your relationship with Will and what it is about him that you believe has been part of helping him be so successful and developing strong relationships all across the industry.
Well, first of all, if you're going to put Will in a box, it's going to be a big box. The thing I think about Will, I think everyone respects about Will, is he's totally authentic. He's who he is. And when you build a business that he has built, and your mom and your dad and your sister and your wife and your kids are all part of it, I mean, that's who you are. I talked about that earlier about, you have to live the life that you're preaching to others. That's who him. All of his relationships are completely authentic. He cares about people. And you cannot replace that. And I saw that when I first got there. He cared about the players on the basketball team. He cared about his community. He cared about the people. And it was all about trying to help them get to another spot. I don't think there's I talked about, service, putting other people first. He does that all the time. He puts everybody ahead of himself. And I think we all just have immense respect for him because he thinks that way, he acts that way. And that's absolutely who he is at his core.
I would agree with that 100%. All right, I want to ask you for your message to this CALS community, these up-and-coming emerging athletic administrators. How can they best prepare and develop themselves to become healthy and effective leaders, equipped to lead people well and tackle all of these myriad challenges that we're facing in the industry today?
You know, excuse me, I don't have any keen insight on that. I do think that authenticity, relationship, honesty, integrity, working hard, doing a great job at what you do. I mean, I've always had 3 career goals. I want to do what I like, where I like, with people I like. And if you are inspired to do that with people, opportunities are going to present themselves. So that's really all I can. I don't mean to get choked up about that, but I didn't want to cough anymore. But I think that those relationships are really important. And you never know how you're going to impact somebody, how they're going to impact you. One of my all-time favorite quotes is actually from John Wooden. It says, "You can't live a perfect day until you help somebody that has no way to repay you." And I think that's really what Will has done. I think that's what CALS does for people.
Well, you have certainly done that for Will and for CALS and for so many people who are part of the CALS community. So again, Bubba, just grateful for the investment that you've made in CALS and in Will and me personally and so many of our friends in the industry. It's remarkable. You've been a great mentor and an inspiration to all of us. And just grateful that you continue to make yourself accessible and lead by example in all that you do.
Well, thanks, Ryan. The feeling is very mutual, and stay positive and stay with, we're providing incredible opportunities for kids to play sports, get an education, and now get compensated. So, I mean, why would we not want to be positive and enthusiastic about that?
We appreciate your leadership, Bubba. Appreciate your time. Best of luck to you in Carolina.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan.
Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive on the CALS Report podcast. My name is Kevin Barefoot with Teamworks, and I am joined today by friend and colleague Karem Cassam. Karem, how are we doing today, man?
Doing really well. We're recording on Wednesday. The transfer portal just opened. It's exciting times for college football.
There is a lot going on, stressful and exciting maybe. First off, I want to thank Will Reese, the entire CALS staff for the opportunity to support their latest endeavor here with the CALS Report podcast. Also want to thank Ryan Bradley for letting me take over today as the host. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive on a topic that is rapidly gaining steam in the collegiate athletic space, and that is data analytics. Specifically, we're going to dive into how analytics can support roster decisions as player contracts become more and more lucrative. We're going to discuss the evolution of data in the pro space and how you as collegiate leaders can professionalize your approach to valuing athletes so you can make the most of your resources, build your best roster, and win championships. And to have that conversation, we want to go to the source, someone who has led data analytics departments at the professional level in both Major League Baseball and the NFL, and that is Dr. Karem Cassam. So thanks again for joining us. Let's dive right in. Karem, tell us your background, education, your work in sports, and then maybe a little bit about your current role at Teamworks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try to go quick, but undergraduate in Canada in electrical computer engineering, and then did a master's in computer science, studying AI before it was cool in the early 2000s, and from there I got really interested in how people make decisions, and so I did a PhD in psychology, studying decision making at Harvard. Was on an academic path, all this time, never really thought too much about sports as a full-time career. And ended up being faculty member at Carnegie Mellon, a department called Social and Decision Sciences, sort of half economics and half psychology. And while I was there, I started doing some consulting with sports teams, also with a movie company, Legendary Entertainment. They make big movies, Dark Knight, Inception. And from that, kind of got the opportunity to be the first full-time data scientist at the Steelers in 2014. So about 10 years ago, joined the Steelers, my first chance inside of a football building. Was there for 5 years, and then moved to the Minnesota Twins, heading up their R&D staff. Was with the Twins for 1 year, and then with Jacksonville Jaguars as a senior VP of football ops, kind of in more of an executive role before joining Zealous. And we were acquired by Teamworks about 6 months ago to kind of build up in this data analytics space. And so with Teamworks, I am a senior director of product, and I oversee our hockey and football platforms.
It's an impressive bio. After hearing the educational background, I would prefer if you did not ask me about my educational background. Two-part follow-up question. How did you get into sports data analytics? And then what led you to move between the NFL and MLB? They seem like two, vastly, obviously different sports leagues, but vastly different. So how did you get into it? And then how did you move between leagues?
Yeah. So, the first part, I think like a lot of people, I was always a sports fan. Not a lot of athletic talent, but always a fan. And like I mentioned, never really thought that I'd have a professional career in sports. But I was living in Boston when the book Moneyball came out, and I read the book, and I'd started watching the Red Sox. They hadn't won World Series then in, whatever it was, 80 years. So there was this compelling sports story, and the book got me more interested in baseball and got me into statistics as well. So that was sort of the beginning. And, from there, kind of hanging out with other people, other nerds that were into sports, and eventually opportunities opened up, and I was excited to be able to jump on them. And then in terms of the move between sports, just moving to MLB was exciting for me, because coming from football, and I've always been a big football fan, seeing what was happening in MLB and knowing that that's a sport that's a couple cycles ahead in terms of analytics adoption, how long they've had numbers be an important part of their decision-making processes. I went from being more of an individual contributor at the Steelers to having a big group, a big team there, and that was really exciting. But like I said, at the end of the day, I love football, and so having the opportunity to move back to the NFL in a leadership role at the time, really excited to have that new challenge and apply some of what I had seen in baseball to advance an NFL franchise.
You used the phrase a couple cycles ahead between baseball, MLB, and NFL. We're going to talk about that because college athletics is a few cycles behind the pros. Why do you think that MLB was a leader in this area? Like, why were they a cycle or two ahead of the NFL on data analytics?
It's interesting because MLB was ahead of even industry, right? Like, I think data, and when I went into when I was a faculty member and I jumped to Legendary Consulting and with the Steelers, big data was still the buzzword, and that seems like ages ago. And that was data science still kind of starting up. I think data science wasn't a term being used, but MLB had this start in around the year 2000. And got to give Michael Lewis a lot of credit. Great book, great movie. Billy Beane, to have a team that was doing that at a low budget and finding success with all of the difficulties of building a successful team in Oakland. I think they had that example, and because they were successful, and then Theo Epstein and others kind of building championship teams using these methods, there was this path for making analytics part of decision making in sport and baseball before it was there in any other sport, and really before it was there for a lot of industries in business more generally.
Somebody has to lead the way, right? So you use the descriptor individual contributor at your time with the Steelers. And then by the time you got to the Jags, you were a senior vice president overseeing football operations and strategy in direct support of the Jags general manager. So not only does that speak to your own career ascension, I think it speaks to the importance that was placed on data over that maybe 10-year span. So what did you observe in those two roles, Steelers and Jags, about the sophistication of player data analytics and then the importance that teams were placing on that strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think sports decisions are unique in this way, in that executives are making just a ton of high stakes decisions. They're really high stakes, and there's a ton of uncertainty. You don't know what the right player to draft is, the right player to sign, and who to franchise, and who to let go. And then there's also a ton of scrutiny. A lot of people are going to be ready to point out if you make a mistake, that you made a mistake, and that's very, very public. So like the stakes of these decisions, like you think of, I think of the Kansas City Chiefs drafting Patrick Mahomes, and they traded up for him. He wasn't, pre-draft reports, he wasn't the top quarterback, but they had that conviction. They saw him, and that decision to draft him has obviously shaped that franchise, for the last decade and maybe another one.
It's gone
And when
pretty
you
well.
have, yeah, absolutely, yeah, whatever their process was, bottle it and ship it to others. And I think, from my decision making days as a graduate student faculty member, when you have these conditions of like high stakes and a lot of uncertainty, a lot of scrutiny, then smart leaders are going to do whatever is possible to get those decisions right. And on the outside, and we talk about Moneyball movie, it ends up being scouts versus analytics, but a lot of this leadership, it's not versus, it's really for the best of them. It's how do we use every tool to get these decisions right.
To go at the question, similar concept, a little bit different angle. Why do you think that player analytics grew so rapidly over the last decade in the NFL, which is where you were working most recently? Can you share some examples of how teams were using data analytics in player selection, draft prep, roster construction? Like, what were the wins that a GM would see that would prompt him to hire you as the SVP of strategy?
I think that it's interesting because the online conversation around data analytics in sport sometimes I think gets this wrong, and that publicly it's a lot about these insights of like, oh, this is the best player, or this is the player we should have drafted, and there's a lot of dunking on social media. But on the team side, and in the NFL in particular, there's there's a lot more work that goes into coming to those same decisions, and what analytics can provide is a way to get there really efficiently. So concrete example, we had 1 year at the Steelers where Kevin Colbert, our GM, I got to give him credit because he showed me how this should work. Um, he had decided that we wanted to focus on quarterbacks, and it wasn't even we were going to draft a quarterback that year, but there were some good quarterbacks, and he wanted to just knowing that that is a high stakes decision for any team. He wanted to bring everything possible to bear, including analytics, including my role, and at the end of the day, at draft time, I had my notes and what I was saying for everyone. But probably more importantly for the process is that he started this in August and July, and so that I knew every week of the season I was putting together a report on all of the players that were popping in terms of whatever analysis I could have, and I was giving that to the GM, I was giving that to our college director, and just to make sure that they're getting eyes on those right people. And so like from the outside as a passionate fan, I think it's easy to think that people who are leading teams, especially teams that aren't winning, which is always going to be half of them, like that they're not capable of seeing the answers. But the GMs, the scouts, the coaches that dedicate their lives to the sport, they're really passionate and they're really capable. And coming up with those insights of like, here's a player you maybe not wouldn't have found, like that's absolutely valuable. It's more valuable the earlier you do it in the process, and it's difficult to do. And if you're allowing coaches and scouts to come to maybe the same conclusions they would have been without you, but you're able to do that so that they're spending a lot less time and getting there quickly, like that's super valuable as well.
So efficiency is a key part of it. Sounds like ensuring that you don't miss on draft picks and then uncovering some maybe diamonds in the rough. Were you building your own models at that time? Like, we'll talk about some of the stuff that we're doing today, but like at that time, what did that look like for you when you're trying to identify those quarterbacks to prepare your leadership team?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was hands-on keyboard every day and building models for every position in the draft to look at free agents, taking every little bit of information that we have to try to find, who's going to succeed at this next level. And in football, it's challenging, I think, it's challenging in every sport, but for different reasons. And in baseball, in some ways, a third baseman is a third baseman. If they're going to add value on the Yankees, they're going to add value on the Red Sox. And football teams between college and pro across teams, what teams ask a receiver to do, what they ask a tight end to do can vary a lot. So, really need a refined set of traits that you're able to say, this is what this player brings to the table, in addition to sort of overall, I think this guy is good, but like, this is why he's going to be good. And these are the types of environments that this player is going to succeed in.
And I would imagine that's even more so in college because you have a much broader spectrum of systems that are run for offense and defense relative to the NFL, which kind of brings us to a natural progression of the conversation here, starting to talk about and think about the collegiate space. We're witnessing the professionalization of college sports every day in front of us. Teamworks had the vision to kind of get ahead of this evolution. Late summer, we acquired Zealous Analytics, which, Karim, that's where you were working at the time. Now, happy to have you on our team. But Zealous was literally one of the world's leading sports data analytics firms. And we are now in the midst, in spring of 2025, launching Teamworks Intelligence. Just talk about, given the differences between professional and college, talk about what Teamworks Intelligence is delivering to college football teams around the country.
What we're delivering is the output of roughly 100 machine learning and statistical models that take high fidelity in-game data and turn it into those player specific athletic traits and abilities. And I realize that's a mouthful. So one way we think about it is as a digital scouting report. So in the same way you'd ask a scout to rate a player on a set of attributes. So speed, change of direction, burst off the line of scrimmage, pass rush, run stopping ability, like these for an edge defender, defensive lineman, different for other positions. We have models that evaluate all of those player traits, and it covers these key attributes for every position on the field. And then because it's driven by computer, by these models, at scale. So we can provide this type of scouting report for every player in FBS, and it'll update after every game when it's in season. So you can imagine how this can complement and supplement a scouting department that's being asked to evaluate, thousands of players that are in the transfer portal today with speed, and how it'll help them find players that'll fit their scheme much more quickly and avoid those mistakes that are going to become more costly as college football evolves as well.
Your point about efficiency is, I think, particularly poignant in the context of the transfer portal. The portal opens up, coaches may lose players unexpectedly, and you got to react and move quickly. And so that's going to, I think, be a key part of it, and something we're excited about. You gave a talk last month at the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference where you said that college football in particular is about 10 years behind the NFL in terms of analytics adoptions. Talk about that. Elaborate. Where do you see the gaps, having been in the pros and now working in the collegiate space here at Teamworks? What are the gaps? What do those look like?
Right now, it feels like in college football, it's more gaps than adoption. So I've spoken to a couple data scientists that are working with college teams, and I see, a few more posts up there and a few more people being hired, but most collegiate, football teams, even like the entire athletic department, don't have dedicated resources for this area today, I'd say.
So it's really just, it hasn't really started yet, it sounds like. I mean, there's just not the people and the tech and the infrastructure even in place yet. So it's just super early.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's early, and as college football is as professionalized and changed like that, the desire is kind of pent up now, and you can kind of feel it starting to come.
Well, the reason we're talking about it today is because others are talking about it, right? We're hearing a lot of discussion, a lot of questions about it among these new GM positions that are being hired in the collegiate space. So there is an athletic director, there's a coach that is watching this today that's eager to dive in. What should a collegiate leader do as a first step towards reshaping their organization into a data-driven enterprise?
The first step is probably just to accept that this is coming, right? Like if you disagree with that view, then there's nothing to do, and you can let the wave pass, and whatever happens, happens. I wouldn't recommend it, right? If you agree that it's coming, that one of the keys for college scouting departments to adapt to this changing landscape is going to be to embrace analytics and the efficiency gains and those insights that are going to come in, then the first step is really to dip your toe in wherever you see within your organization that there's going to be an appetite and opportunity and value. With scouting applications like ours, one of the nice things that's happened is that I think it's easier to get started than it has been before. As we think about sometimes the progression of data in football from box scores just at a game level, you know how many rushing yards someone has, to play by play, knowing for every play, who missed tackles, who dropped a pass, and now to, high fidelity, knowing 10 times, 20 times a second, where is everyone, where the ball is. The data science gets harder and harder as you do that progression, but in some ways the language gets a lot easier. So some of the integration I think has gotten easier. In that play-by-play era, we'd be, talking about expected points added per play or yards per route run for a receiver, and those are great stats, and they're informative, and they might help you select players, but they're harder to communicate within a football building. And now, with the level of data, the amount of data we have, the computers, those models can start seeing the game a little bit more like the human eye does. And because of that, we're able to talk about change of direction as a metric, or burst off the line of scrimmage, or speed, run blocking ability, all these things. We can use the language that coaches are using. So one of the nice things is it's never been easier to integrate analytics within a football staff.
All right. So then I heard you say dip a toe in. I gotta press you a little bit and get a little more specific, because I know that there are athletic leaders out there that are licking their chops and thinking, yeah, I want to get going with this. Let's expand the aperture. Like, what does a 3 to 5 year plan look like? Do I go, like literally, do I go buy servers? Do I go hire a consultant? Do I hire my first data scientist and have them do an evaluation? Like, how would I formulate a 3 to 5 year plan of how I'd get there as an athletic leader who wants to take these steps?
I think those are all options. Like those are all legitimate possible paths. Like some teams are gonna look to build all of these completely in-house, and that's what professional teams have done. Some of them, it's a difficult path. I think it starts with hiring someone that's technically capable of sorting out those servers, whether you're bringing them on premises or today more likely using the cloud. Someone that can build those models, do some engineering, who's able to build and manage a team of people, to grow these capabilities. And then, sometimes the hard part is to find someone that has those abilities and is also going to be effective at communicating with the football staff. That's a possible path. It's hard, and it takes a couple years. The other way is to partner with a company like Teamworks, right? And we've already put in something like 40 or 50 person years of data science and engineering efforts, and we have these tools, and we can kind of flip a switch and give teams access to these tools that NFL teams have been using for the last few years already.
For comparison, the average NFL team, like how many data science folks do they have on staff, and like and what do you imagine like a range that they've invested in to kind of build an in-house data analytics program, just so our audience here can have a sense of what this looks like?
Yeah, there's definitely a range.
Sure.
And I think the average team, say 4 people in data science engineering roles, 4 to 5, depends on how you count and who you're counting part of it. And then in terms of the investment, we look at the high end of teams. There's probably a team that's had, say, on average, 8 people working for the last 10 years, so 80 person years of effort to go into where they're at today. So there's a big range, but as we've gone to these higher amounts of data, when we get into the ball and player tracking, it ends up like the physical storage is roughly 1,000 times more data than it was a few years ago, and the engineering effort that goes into just putting it into a format that allows you to start doing that modeling, that ends up being substantial. Once you have some of these models in place, making sure that they are reliable and they're updating at a regular interval and they're not breaking when something happens, that takes a lot of time. So a lot of the effort is kind of even beyond the modeling, and that's what can end up taking a lot of time.
So you talked about the 40 to 50 person years at Zealous that had gone into building the infrastructure, creating the models, refining the data. As we transition here into Teamworks Intelligence, given the nascency of analytics in the collegiate space, we decided to like productize our offering in the form of a searchable database of the metrics that you guys have spent 40 to 50 person years creating. Can you talk about the work that went into those models? Why are the metrics unique?
It is a lot of work, and in some ways that's not bad for us. It allows us to be really transparent with our partners about everything that goes into our models, because we're not worried about people copying it, right? To go from that idea to that execution is just really, really hard. And we have an incredible team of data scientists. Most of them have advanced degrees in statistics or computer science, and most of them have experience with sports teams as well. And even for them, and with the infrastructure that we have built and the lessons that we can take from our decades of experience across sports, these models to take to be able to quantify a single metric of like a receiver's ability to change direction, that can take 4 to 8 months after you've done all that pre-work. So it just takes a ton of time to get it right, to have those models be reliable, to have them be accurate, and really to pass the eye test in a way that football teams are going to be willing to use them. It's worth it because when you get it right, then you're not you can unlike a scout that's going to evaluate one player at a time. Now you'll be able to evaluate every player on that dimension and really paint a picture of their abilities, their strengths and weaknesses, and how they're going to fit into any particular scheme.
So as analytics gets more prevalent, right, and we intend to be a key part of that, what do you see more advanced data analytics enabling coaches and administrators to do in college in the coming years? Like, what does a future state look like 5 to 10 years from now? Because you've lived it, it's coming, you see it coming. Like, what do you see in college over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, and this is one where I don't want to discount the fact that college will be a little bit different, and there's going to be new challenges and new problems. But as you said, by and large, I think we can see that path. And our expectation is that that 10-year head start that the NFL has right now, it's going to close rapidly, and college teams are going to start having analytics capabilities on par with professional teams in football and really across sports. And tools like the one that we've been talking about, they're really focused on transfer portal and self-scouting use cases. And tooling in other areas of the NFL that professional teams have built, that's going to come as well. So detailed advanced scouting reports, preparing for the next opponent, understanding those matchups and ways to exploit those matchups. And in the same way that like maybe there'll be some insight, but there's going to be a lot of efficiency as well. That before a coach sits down on Sunday morning to prepare for next Saturday's game, that they're going to have some sense of like, hey, they have this receiver that isn't that fast, but is extremely shifty. And we're versus our zone defense, and our backers, may cause issues, and we need to plan for that player. That type of advanced scouting report, tools that manage, to help with game strategy, optimize decision making in within game, within that space, and then tools that are focused on player development, getting the right people in the building. That transfer portal application is important, but just as important is developing players that you have and maximizing them. And I think analytics can play a big role there as well.
The development of your own team has always been interesting to me. Having advanced analytics on guys that are on your team that obviously you see at practice, but may not have a ton of game film on. But when you apply those advanced analytics, it can help you get more out of those players, or maybe understand how hard you should fight for them if they do enter their name in the portal. So that's another component or facet of this that I think will be interesting to see develop. Another question is, when you were at Zealous and now with Teamworks Intelligence working with NFL teams over the years, you did a nice job there of like translating some of the benefits, that advanced scouting. What else did you see? What other advantages did you see those NFL teams achieve that maybe other organizations who weren't leading into data analytics? Were there some other kind of separators that you witnessed up close?
Yeah, I think there's like the advanced scouting is a piece of it, and NFL coaches are usually watching 4 or 5 of the opponent's previous games, and some stuff is they're going to learn a lot from it, right? These are experts that are spending their lives. Passionate fans watch like 3 games a week, and these guys are watching football 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They're constantly watching, so they get a lot of those games, but some things just don't happen that often, and you might not see it in the last 4 games, or in the last 4 games, like one player was injured and they changed what they're doing, and that player is coming back. And just to know that these things are going to happen before you sit down, before you kind of start spending time, that can be really valuable. The player development piece you mentioned too is sort of an important one, and this is something I think I took from baseball and working with the Twins, where just structurally, if you think of professional baseball, players get drafted, they're under club control for years and years before they see the field. And so, like the NFL equivalent or the college football equivalent is if you had like a 300-person other roster that you were just developing for one day being on the field. The Twins had 7 professional teams that weren't the Twins that were under their umbrella. And so those players and those coaches are always asking of like, what does this pitcher need to do to make the jump from AA to AAA or AAA to major league? What can he work on? Like what pitch, what aspects of that pitch does he need a new pitch? Is it just a matter of velocity? And the same for hitters. And I think football the same way, all sports the same way, that development piece makes a big difference, and everything that we can do to help facilitate that path for these young athletes is critical.
Karem, this has been fascinating and I think very helpful. I'll get you out of here on this one. Kind of a closing statement, if you will. What should every AD and coach or leader that's listening to this know about the value of analytics and why it should be part of their strategic roadmap going forward?
Yeah, a great question to finish on. I think it comes down to this fact that college sports is changing, and the player pool that teams recruit from used to be high school students in a specific area, and now it's that plus it's JUCO plus it's players from every other team around the country, and players are getting paid more. Salary cap is coming, and that's going to make mistakes get more costly really fast. And so as an AD, I think your choice is, do I want to stick with these traditional methods, building out a large scouting department to cover all of these players that we're responsible to look at now, or can we find another path using analytics to enable a smaller staff to do more in less time, to evaluate more players, find those hidden gems, have fewer mistakes? It's sort of that efficiency cost case. And then I think, at the end of the day, it's really about driving wins, right? What we've seen through analytics revolution, data science revolution in sports over the last couple of decades is that the early adopters, they get the competitive advantages, right? So starting with Billy Beane and those Moneyball A's that, by using the richest source of data that they had available to them, they were able to get, that competitive advantage. And what we learned from baseball and other sports is that the alternative really is being left behind.
Dr. Karem Cassam, I want to thank you again, man, for joining us, and the whole CALS crew for giving both of us the opportunity to go deep dive on the CALS Report podcast. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 8 of the CALS Report. It was an honor to feature North Carolina AD Bubba Cunningham in the big interview, sharing his perspective on the evolution of college athletics and his role in the origin story of CALS. And a big thank you to Kevin Barefoot and Dr. Karem Cassam for leading an incredibly timely deep dive on the rise of data analytics in college athletics and what it means for the future of roster building, evaluation, and leadership decision-making across the industry. We're grateful to all of our guests for their honesty, insight, and investment in this community, and to each of you listening for your continued commitment to growth, service, and leadership in college athletics. This episode of the CALS Report has been brought to you by Teamworks, the operating system for sports. As college athletics navigates NIL, revenue sharing, and operational complexity, Teamworks is helping leaders across the country simplify systems and support student athletes more strategically. Learn more at teamworks.com. Be sure to subscribe to the CALS Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at the CALS Report, and on Twitter, X, at AD Symposium for more content, conversations, and behind-the-scenes insights. To learn more about CALS, CALS One Day, or any of our events, please visit adsymposium.us. I'm Will Reese, and this has been the CALS Report. Until next time, stay connected and keep leading the way in college athletics.